my story truly revolves a lot around nature. And that story began in a little bitty town of Pleasantville, Indiana. Population 120, if you count the dogs and the chickens. And after high school and a couple of years of college, I decided to join the military. And I enlisted in the Navy as a nuclear-powered machinist mate, and then volunteered for submarine service. There was a time there I was deployed. I was underwater without seeing daylight for 89 days. 124 days without pulling into a port. Approximately 28 out of 30 months I was away from my home. So, I had these three beautiful girls, Courtney, Ashley, Taylor, better known to me as Court, Peanut, and Bug. They knew me as Dad, but they didn't know who Dad was. And more importantly, I really didn't know who they were. So, I made this decision to get out after 9 years. I knew if I made that 10-year hump, I was going to stay in. I truly loved what I was doing, and I considered it an honor to serve the country. But I think about how that time in the service, doing all those missions and drill after drill after drill, sometimes in the dark, was going to help me prepare for the next chapter of my life. And that chapter began on May the 4th, 1997. I'm sure everyone in here has had a day or a moment other than this pandemic that they can't forget. And they might have wished that they could change. That day I'll never forget. And it was. And I want to repeat that. It was a day that I wish I could have changed. It was a day that I was accidentally shot by a good friend of mine while turkey hunting. I took a full shotgun blast to the face at about 9 steps. I had like 85 pellets up in there somewhere. And I can remember with my head ringing and pounding, I got up onto my knees and I reached up and I wiped my eyes because I simply thought I had something covering my face. I took my gloves off and I reached up and I slowly wiped them again. Only this time, as I felt the blood running down my hands, I knew what had happened. And that I was once again in the dark, only this time perhaps forever. And I think Helen Keller said it the best when she said, the only thing worse than being blind is having eyesight with no vision. But I like to add a little bit to that, and you've probably heard other people say something similar, but, to me, vision is nothing more than a dream unless you do something to turn it into reality. And I truly do believe that if we're willing to refocus our mind, expand our vision, that vision that's within us, our heart, our mind, our soul, our spirit, it's then that we can see outside the box, beyond the status quo. We can turn dreams into reality and achieve the perceived impossible. But along with the mountaineering and rock climbing, I got into kayaking. And it's taken me to the Grand Canyon 4 times now. And on my first trip down, like I said, it had never been done before. The last trip, I was joined by 4 other veterans who lost their eyesight as a result of combat. And the trip before that, I was joined and guided by a guy missing both legs above the knees, most of both hands, and another guy who had a traumatic brain injury and PTSD. And here was this guy missing both legs. These guys were not only guiding me through all the quote-unquote hero lines on the river, the biggest waves and the holes and the rapids, but here's this guy missing both legs, guiding me on all these side canyon hikes, through these slots, over these rocks and boulders. Sometimes we're several hundred feet above the canyon floor. And the entire time he was guiding me, he was just laughing and saying, I love the challenge. I love the challenge. And very, very seldom did he ever say, hey, give me a hand. But when I think about all those trips and when we all jump into our kayaks, we put on our gear, our helmet, our sunglasses, grab our paddles. If you were to look at it, you couldn't tell who's blind. Who's missing their legs? Who has a traumatic brain injury? We look like every other kayaker. And the simple fact is, we are kayakers. The simple fact is, I might be blind, but I'm still me.